Good morning, guys. Welcome to Advisory. For this next group of lessons, we're going to talk about bias. Okay, just trying to switch things up entirely. Thought this was an important topic that we all need to learn about or think about or consider. Okay, so that's why we're talking about this. So first, I want you to all to think about your own definition of what bias means. So what is it? Take a moment to think about your own definition and then turn and share with your partner or discuss as a class, whatever your teacher would like to do. So you can write independently in your journal. You can discuss it again with the person next to you. But how do you personally define bias? What does it mean? And if you don't know, that's okay. We're going to talk about it, but this is just kind of trying to gauge where you're at and what you know about this term. So just give you a couple minutes to do that. Okay, so thanks for taking the time to give that some thought. What is bias? So bias is a strong inclination of the mind or a preconceived opinion about something or someone. It could be favorable or unfavorable, so it could be good or bad or negative or positive, right? It's kind of a broad term, so throughout this lesson, we're going to kind of break down different types of bias. But it could also include or be interchangeable with other terms like bigotry, or racism, homophobia, etc., right? Those are like preconceived thoughts that we might have about somebody else. And it could be overt or it could be subtle, right? It could be something that we don't even recognize that we hold that specific bias, right? So hopefully this lesson, as we work through it, can help us identify our own biases and we can move, just be more aware moving forward. That's kind of the goal. Okay. So with that said, why is it important to think about bias? So bias affects our lives in multiple ways. It's all around us, right? And it affects the society that we live in and we all live in, right? We are sometimes the subjects of bias and sometimes we are the perpetrators, which means sometimes we are the people that get judged without people really knowing us. And sometimes we do that to others as well. So our biases have been formed by our experiences, like our upbringing, and the multiple influences around us. So social media, community, friends, okay? So we very much are influenced by the things around us. And in some cases, we might not even recognize how impacted we are by other people's beliefs and feelings and thoughts, okay? So why is it important to think about bias, okay, and be reflective of our own biases, right? Well, bias harms other people, particularly marginalized and oppressed people, okay? So historically, people of color have been the most marginalized. And so BIPOC, which you see here, is considered Black Indigenous people of color, okay? So that's what that means. So when you see BIPOC, that's what that stands for, okay? So other people's bias as well as our own can potentially harm other people, right? So we should all work to confront it and to combat it so that we're not spreading that negativity in the world, right? So, do you have a bias? So I want you to think deeply about this question and then take a few minutes to write a brief journal response. So this is not something that will be shared, right? Because it is difficult to really kind of acknowledge our faults and the things that we don't necessarily find positive about ourselves, right? We think of as flaws. So I don't want you to share this, right? This is just for you. What biases might you have and how do you think they are formed or were formed, okay? Because it's important not only to recognize how we might feel about certain things, but is where they come from. Is it something that we learned growing up, maybe around, our family members who might have this certain perspective about a certain group of people? Okay. So I will share how I am biased. This is one thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this, is that when people tell me they are very religious, I sort of find myself guarding myself, right? And it's pretty much, I have an experience when I was younger with my older sister who started to go to this evangelical church, right? And we grew up Catholic, but as I got older, I sort of stepped away, sort of found my own space, right? And I was felt very much judged by my older sister because her whole perspective was, if I'm not going to church every Sunday and a couple times a week, that I'm a bad person, essentially. I found myself feeling very hurt by that. Okay, so I guess I spent a lot of years trying to prove to my sister that I could still be a good person, but not necessarily consider myself religious in the way that she did, right? So, and I am spiritual in my own way, and I found my own path, and I'm comfortable with where I am, and I'm happy, and I fully respect other people's stance, right? I really believe that my sister really needed that in her life and needs that in her life, and it makes her a better person, and I feel that that's really important to recognize. But I think I struggled with the judgment that I felt, and so I feel like I have that visceral reaction when I hear from somebody saying that they're like extremely religious, and that's something I have to acknowledge, because I know deep down that not everybody's going to judge me for not being, on the same page, but I need to kind of check myself every time. So I can still control my open-mindedness when relating to others. So just because I feel judged, or maybe that I am judged, I can make sure that I don't do that to other people, right? So that's something that when somebody says, that that's a big part of their lives, instead of me kind of closing up and kind of shying away from them because I'm afraid of that judgment, it's important for me to remind myself that everybody's different. And if they judge me, as long as I'm not judging them, that's making me a better person, right? Is working through that. So that's an example, right? So basically, I just want you to think about if you have a bias, and I think we all do. Some of it is unknown, right? What does that look like? And where does it come from? Okay. And how do you think it was formed? In my case, I feel like it was formed because of my sister's reaction to me when we were younger. Therefore, I use that lens when I'm interactions with other people, right? So yeah, take some time, think about this question, write it down, and yeah, have a great day, guys. We'll see you next time.